Eleanor Mitchell stood at the edge of the observation platform, watching the twin suns of Kethril sink below the horizon. The planet was not beautiful. Its sky was the color of rust, and the wind carried the smell of dust and distant fires. But it was far from New Terra, and that was all that mattered. She had been a doctor for 23 years. She had trained for a decade in the best medical schools humanity had to offer. She had saved countless lives. And then she had thrown it all away because she could not do what they asked her to do. The memory still burned. The colonial board sitting in their clean offices, their faces serious and official. Dr. Raymond speaking first, his voice calm and reasonable. "We need you to run some experiments, Eleanor. Nothing too extreme. We just need to understand how certain compounds affect human neural tissue. It will help us develop better medicines." But Eleanor had seen the files. She had read the specifications. The experiments would cause pain. They would cause permanent damage. And they would be conducted on prisoners who had no choice, no voice, no hope. When she refused, they called her naive, idealistic, dangerous to the colony's future. The board voted unanimously. Within 3 months, Eleanor was on a transport ship heading away from everything she knew. Kethril had seemed like the end of the world when she arrived. The planet was controlled by various warlords and petty kingdoms. Technology was a strange mix of advanced and primitive. The people, if you could call the various alien species that, were brutal, violent, and indifferent to human life. Eleanor had no money, no connections, and no one waiting for her. But she had her medical knowledge, and that turned out to be worth more than anything else in this part of the galaxy. She found the old station 3 kilometers outside the main city of Velcathan. It was broken and half buried, a relic from some previous civilization. The computer systems were damaged, but Eleanor was skilled with technology as well as medicine. She spent 2 months repairing what she could, salvaging what she could not. She set up a basic medical facility with equipment she scavenged from junkyards and traded for with the few credits she had. Then she simply waited. The first patient came on a rain-soaked evening. A young alien worker with a deep cut on his arm, infected and swollen. He was terrified of Eleanor at first. Humans were rare on Kethril, and most of them were traders or slavers. But Eleanor was gentle. She cleaned the wound carefully, applied medicines, and bandaged it with expertise. She asked for no payment, though the worker offered what little he had. Word spread slowly through the city. There was a human at the old station. She was strange. She was kind. She actually knew medicine. Over the next 2 years, Eleanor built a reputation. She treated workers and slaves, merchants and refugees. She treated the poor because they came to her first. Then, gradually, the wealthy and powerful began arriving. A nobleman with a poisoned arrow wound. A general's daughter with a fever no one could cure. A merchant prince with an infection that threatened his life. Eleanor treated them all the same way. With skill. With care. Without judgment. The Valerian people were a warrior species, tall and strong, with gray skin that seemed to shimmer in certain light. They had 3 hearts and blood that was thicker and darker than human blood. Their physiology was strange, but Eleanor had learned it like she had learned everything else. Through study, through mistakes, through determination. She read every medical text she could find. She studied anatomy on the rare specimens she obtained. She experimented carefully, ethically, always with the goal of healing, never of harming. By year 3, her reputation had grown so much that warlords sent their injured to her. Pirates brought their sick. Even some of the more educated Valerian physicians began to respect her knowledge, though they would never admit it openly. A human, understanding their bodies better than they understood their own. Eleanor lived simply in 2 rooms of the old station. Her life was work. Wake up, treat patients, study, sleep, repeat. She did not go to the city much. She did not make friends, though some of the regular patients seemed to care about her. An old merchant named Thomas who brought her food. A young mechanic named Robert who helped repair her equipment in exchange for medical care. A woman named Catherine, another human exile, who visited sometimes and brought news from the wider galaxy. Eleanor had made peace with her exile. She was not happy, but she was not miserable either. She had purpose. She had meaning. She was doing exactly what she had been trained to do, and she was doing it well. The night everything changed started like any other night. Eleanor was reading an old medical journal on her small computer screen when the alarm sounded. 3 soldiers burst through the door, carrying a massive figure between them. The Valerian warlord was barely conscious, his 3 hearts beating erratically, his skin turning a sickly gray color. "Please," one of the soldiers said in broken standard. "Please. Save him. You are the only one who can." Eleanor looked at the warlord. She did not recognize him, but she could see he was important from the quality of his armor, the respect in the soldiers' voices. She also understood immediately what this meant. If she healed him, she would make enemies. If she refused, she would betray everything she believed in. She stood up without hesitation. "Bring him to the surgical room," she said, already moving. "And I will need hot water and all the stimulant compounds you have in your medical kits. We have maybe an hour before his organs start failing. After that, there is nothing anyone can do." As the soldiers moved quickly to obey, Eleanor felt something shift inside her. She did not know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. The old station, the quiet work, the simple existence, it was all about to end. But right now there was only a patient who needed her. And that was all that mattered. Eleanor's hands moved with a precision that came from years of practice and thousands of hours of training. The warlord lay on her surgical table, his massive body barely fitting on the narrow platform. His skin was already starting to turn darker, a sign that his organs were beginning to fail. She had perhaps 90 minutes. Maybe less. "Arya, initiate full diagnostic scan," Eleanor commanded her artificial intelligence assistant. The old computer system hummed to life, its sensors moving across the warlord's body, reading his internal systems. "Scan complete," Arya responded in her calm, mechanical voice. 3 hearts showing critical arrhythmia. Poison detected in bloodstream. Estimated time to complete organ failure, 84 minutes. Recommend immediate intervention. Eleanor was already preparing the surgical field. She had studied Valerian physiology for 2 years, but she had never performed major surgery on one before. The theoretical knowledge was one thing. The reality of holding a warlord's life in your hands was something else entirely. The 3 soldiers stood in the corner of the surgical room, their large frames taking up much of the space. One of them was older, with scars across his face that told stories of 100 battles. Eleanor recognized authority when she saw it. "You need to leave," she said firmly, not looking up from her work. "All of you. You cannot stay here. What I am going to do, I must do alone." "We cannot leave our commander," the scarred soldier said. "Then you will distract me and he will die," Eleanor replied. "Do you want that?" The scarred soldier hesitated for only a moment. Then he nodded to the others and they filed out of the room. The older soldier paused at the door. "Save him," he said simply. "Please." Eleanor did not answer. She was already moving to the next step. The poison was unlike anything she had encountered before. She ran samples through her ancient analytical equipment, watching the readouts scroll across the screen. It was a neurotoxin, engineered to target the electrical signals that kept a Valorian's 3 hearts synchronized. Without that synchronization, the hearts would beat out of rhythm with each other. Eventually they would stop altogether. Eleanor had no antitoxin for this poison. The station did not have one. She would have to make one. She worked quickly, drawing from the warlord's blood, analyzing its chemical composition. She cross-referenced her medical database with everything she knew about Valerian physiology. The poison attacked proteins in the blood that regulated heart rhythm. If she could neutralize those proteins, if she could restore the balance, she might be able to stop the poison from spreading further. It was dangerous. It was experimental. It was the kind of work that would have gotten her expelled from medical school if she had tried it there. It was also the only thing that might work. Eleanor began preparing a series of compounds, mixing chemicals in precise measurements. Her hands were steady even though her heart was racing. She had treated many patients over the past 2 years, but none of them had been as important as this. None of them had been a warlord whose death might start wars across the entire region. She did not think about that. She could not afford to think about that. She could only think about the work. The warlord's breathing became more shallow. His skin darkened further. Eleanor administered the first injection directly into his bloodstream, a cocktail of compounds designed to slow his metabolism and reduce the strain on his hearts. It was a technique she had read about in old human medical journals, adapted for Valerian biology. She monitored his vital signs constantly, watching the small screen that showed his heart activity. The rhythm was becoming more erratic. She had perhaps 60 minutes left. Eleanor made a decision. She would have to perform a procedure that no human had ever attempted on a Valerian before. She would have to directly access his hearts and stabilize them herself. She sterilized the surgical area on his chest, marking the exact spots where she would make her incisions. A normal doctor would have used automated surgical equipment, but Eleanor's equipment was old and unreliable. She had learned to work with her hands, using precision and knowledge rather than technology. She made the first incision carefully, cutting through skin and muscle to reveal the chamber where his primary heart was located. The sight of it took her breath away for just a moment. The heart was enormous, the size of both her fists together, and it was beating rapidly, out of sync with the other two. Eleanor began the delicate work of inserting monitoring lines into the tissue around the heart. She was not trying to repair it. She was trying to give her other treatments time to work. She was buying time. "Come on," she whispered to the warlord, though he could not hear her. "Come on. Stay with me." Hours passed. Eleanor was not sure how many. She lost track of time. There was only the work. The warlord's chest. The heart she was trying to save. The poison she was fighting against. She administered another injection, this one directly into the tissue surrounding the hearts. The chemical reaction was almost immediate. She could see it under the surgical light, could see the poison's color changing as the neutralizing compound attacked it. The warlord's hearts began to slow their erratic rhythm. Not returning to normal yet, but becoming more stable. Eleanor watched the screen, watching the patterns of electrical activity. They were evening out. The three hearts were beginning to beat in the proper sequence again. She worked for another hour, carefully closing the incisions, ensuring that everything was sealed properly. She removed the monitoring lines. She applied bandages and medicines designed to prevent infection. When she finally stepped back from the surgical table, her entire body was shaking with exhaustion. She had been working for nearly 5 hours without stopping. Her back ached. Her hands were cramped. Her eyes were burning with fatigue. But the warlord was still alive. Eleanor looked at his face in the dim light of the surgical room. His breathing had stabilized. His skin was returning to its normal color. The immediate crisis had passed. She sat down in a nearby chair and simply breathed for several minutes. She had done it. Against all odds, using techniques no one had ever tried before, she had saved him. Eleanor did not know that she was about to change the course of history. She did not know that this one night of work would transform her from an exiled doctor to the most important person in an entire empire. She only knew that she had done her job. She had taken an oath to save lives and she had kept that oath. And that was enough. Kes then opened his eyes slowly as if waking from a very long sleep. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar. The air smelled of medicine and something else, something he did not recognize. His body felt heavy, like it was not entirely his own. He tried to move, but pain shot through his chest and he stopped. A shadow moved across his vision. A figure appeared beside his bed. Eleanor was there, checking the monitors that were attached to his body. She looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back messily. Dark circles hung under her eyes. She wore the same clothes she had worn during the surgery, now stained with blood and other fluids. "You are awake," she said simply. She began checking his vital signs, her hands moving with professional efficiency. "How do you feel?" Kes then tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Eleanor helped him drink water from a cup, supporting his head slightly. The water was cool and tasted better than anything he had ever consumed. "What happened?" he asked, his voice rough and unfamiliar to his own ears. "You were poisoned," Eleanor explained, still examining him. "A neurotoxin, very sophisticated. Your three hearts were failing. The poison was attacking the electrical signals that keep them synchronized. And you saved me," Kes then said. It was not a question. He could feel that he was alive. He could feel that something had changed inside him, something fundamental. "Yes," Eleanor said. "Though I am not sure how long it will hold. You need to rest for at least 2 weeks. No activity. No stress. Your body needs time to heal completely." Kes then looked at her properly for the first time. She was small, smaller than any Valerian. Her skin was pale, almost colorless compared to his own gray. Her eyes were a strange light color, almost like ice. She was not what he had expected. He did not know what he had expected, but it was not this tired, ordinary-looking human woman. "What is your name?" he asked. "Eleanor Mitchell," she replied. "I am a doctor." "I am Warlord Kes then," he said. "Ruler of the Eastern Valerian territories." Eleanor nodded. She had probably known this already, but she said nothing. She simply finished her examination and began making notes on a small data pad. "You should rest," she said. "I will return in a few hours to check on you again." She was leaving, but Kes then found that he did not want her to go. "Wait," he said. "Why did you save me?" Eleanor paused at the door and turned back to look at him. "Because you needed help," she said simply. "That is what doctors do. We help people." Then she was gone, leaving Kes then alone with his thoughts. Over the next several days, Eleanor visited him regularly. She changed his bandages. She administered medicines. She asked him questions about how he felt, about his pain level, about any strange sensations in his body. He answered all of her questions honestly. Keston had spent his entire life around people who feared him or wanted something from him. His generals respected him but kept distance. His servants obeyed him but would never speak freely. His enemies tried to kill him. But Eleanor treated him like she would treat anyone. She was neither impressed by his status nor afraid of his power. On the 5th day of his recovery, Commander Vex arrived at the medical station. The scarred soldier who had brought Keston in now looked relieved to see his warlord awake and conscious. "My lord," Vex said, kneeling, "the Empire burns. General Vortach has declared that you are dead. He is claiming the throne. Half the territories have already pledged their loyalty to him." Keston felt anger rise in him, but Eleanor was there and she shook her head sharply. "No excitement," she said to Vex. "Your warlord's hearts are still unstable. Stress could kill him." Vex looked shocked that a human would speak to him with such authority, but he obeyed. He lowered his voice and continued his report more quietly, speaking of the political situation, the generals who were wavering in their loyalties, the territories that were being seized. When Vex left, Eleanor sat beside Keston's bed. "You are worried," she said. "My empire is falling apart," Keston replied. "Vortach is taking it from me while I lie here helpless." "You are not helpless," Eleanor said. "You are healing. There is a difference. Vortach will still be there in 2 weeks. The Empire will still be there. But you will be stronger then. You will be able to fight back." "How can you be so certain?" Keston asked. Eleanor smiled slightly. "Because I saved your life against impossible odds. If I can do that, you can certainly handle a power-hungry general." Over the following weeks, Keston learned more about Eleanor. He learned that she came from a different world, a place called Earth, though she had lived in a human colony before she came to Kethril. He learned that she had been cast out by her own people for refusing to do something she believed was wrong. He learned that she had spent 2 years treating patients on this broken world, asking for nothing in return. When he was strong enough to sit up, he asked her, "Why did you do this? Why did you save me? You did not know me. You did not know if it was worth the effort." Eleanor was changing his bandages, her hands gentle and practiced. "In my culture we have an oath," she said. "A Hippocratic oath. It says that I should preserve life. It does not say save only the lives of people you like. It does not say save only those who can reward you. It says save life. That is what I did." "In Valerian culture," Keston said slowly, "there is a concept called a life debt. When someone saves your life, you are bound to them forever. You owe them everything. Your loyalty, your service, your life itself if they ask for it. It is the most sacred bond that can exist between two beings." Eleanor stopped working and looked at him. "I do not want that," she said. "I do not want your debt. I do not want your loyalty. I want you to get better and go back to your empire." "You do not have a choice," Keston said. "The debt exists whether you accept it or not. In our culture this is not a burden. It is an honor. I owe you my life, Eleanor Mitchell. And in time you will understand what that means." Eleanor finished her work and left without saying anything else. But Keston could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She had saved a warlord's life, and now that warlord believed he belonged to her in a way that transcended normal loyalty. She had no idea what she had set in motion. The night was dark and cold when Eleanor heard the alarms. She had grown used to the quiet of the medical station, broken only by the occasional sound of patients breathing or machines humming. The sound was different. The sound meant danger. She was in her small quarters when the first explosion rocked the building. Eleanor grabbed onto her desk to keep from falling, her heart suddenly racing. Through the window she could see fires starting in the distance, moving toward the station. Eleanor ran to Keston's room. The warlord was still recovering, still weak from the poison and the surgery. He was sitting up in bed, his scarred face alert despite his condition. "We need to move," Eleanor said. "Now." "Vortach," Keston said simply. It was not a question. "I do not know who it is," Eleanor replied. "But someone is attacking this station and they are not being careful about it." She helped Keston out of bed, supporting his weight as they moved toward the back of the medical station. Eleanor had spent 2 years here, and she knew every passage, every hidden room, every forgotten corner. The station was old, built by a civilization long dead, and it had many secrets. Eleanor led Keston through a narrow corridor that few people knew about. Behind them they could hear the sounds of soldiers entering the building. Shouting. Breaking glass. More explosions. "They are trying to kill me," Keston said, his breathing heavy from the effort of moving. They are trying to kill both of us now, Eleanor corrected. Because I am helping you. That makes me a target too. She guided him into a hidden chamber, a room that had no doors, only a concealed entrance that looked like solid wall. Eleanor sealed them inside, and the sounds of destruction became muffled and distant. We will be safe here for a while, she said. This chamber has its own air system. They will not find us. They sat in the darkness, waiting. Eleanor kept Kesthen's vital signs monitored on a small handheld device. His heart rate was elevated, his breathing fast. The stress was not good for him. Do not worry, Eleanor said, though she was worried herself. We will survive this. You should not be here, Kesthen said. This is not your war. You should leave Kethril. Go somewhere safe. Where? Eleanor asked. There is nowhere safe in this galaxy for an exiled human. I have already lost everything once. I will not run again. Hours passed. Eleanor and Kesthen sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the attack continuing outside. Then gradually the sounds changed. They heard new voices, different shouting. The sound of soldiers fighting each other. Eventually all the sounds stopped. Eleanor opened the hidden chamber carefully. The medical station was damaged but still standing. Bodies lay on the ground, but they wore different armor than the ones who had attacked. Commander Vex appeared in the corridor, his scarred face covered in blood that was not his own. My lord, Vex said, kneeling. You are safe. We drove them back. General Vortach's forces have retreated. Kesthen looked at Eleanor. She could see the pain in his eyes, not physical pain but the pain of understanding. Vortach tried to kill me while I was healing, he said. He is desperate. He wants the Empire so badly that he cannot wait for me to grow weak naturally. Eleanor helped Kesthen back to his bed. She checked his vital signs again, relieved to see that despite the stress, his hearts were holding steady. The surgery had done its work well. We need to leave this place, Vex said. It is not safe anymore. General Vortach knows where you are now. He will keep trying. Not yet, Eleanor said. Kesthen is not strong enough to travel. Then we stay and defend this position, Vex replied. I will gather more soldiers. We will fortify the station. But Kesthen was thinking. Eleanor could see him planning, his mind working through the political situation. He had been a warlord for many years. He understood power and strategy in ways that Eleanor did not. No, Kesthen said finally. We do not run and we do not hide. We do something unexpected. He called Vex closer and began to speak. Eleanor listened as the warlord explained his plan. It was bold and risky, but it was also brilliant. 3 days later, Eleanor stood in the grand hall of Kesthen's palace. She had never been here before. The palace was vast and beautiful, with high ceilings and walls covered in tapestries that told the history of Valerian culture. Hundreds of soldiers and officials filled the space, standing in neat rows, all of them waiting. Kesthen stood on a raised platform, still moving carefully, still showing signs of his recent illness. But his voice was strong and clear. Eleanor could see that he was still weak, but he was pushing through the pain. She wanted to stop him, to tell him to sit down and rest. But she knew this moment was important. I have called you here to make an announcement, Kesthen said. His voice carried across the entire hall. I am still weak from my recent poisoning. General Vortach believes this makes me vulnerable. He is wrong. He paused and all eyes were on him. I am announcing that Eleanor Mitchell, the human doctor who saved my life, will rule beside me as co-commander of the Eastern Valerian territories, Kesthen declared. Any being who challenges this decision challenges me. Any being who questions this decision questions my judgment. And I assure you, my judgment has never been better. The hall erupted in shock and confusion. Eleanor stood frozen, unable to believe what she had just heard. Kesthen was looking at her, and there was something in his eyes that she understood now. This was his life debt. This was how a Valerian honored the one who had saved them. Not with gold or land but with power. With trust. But I do not want power, Eleanor said, her voice small in the vast hall. Neither did you want to save a warlord's life, Kesthen replied. Yet you did. This is not about what you want. This is about what you deserve. And you deserve recognition. You deserve authority. You deserve to be more than a doctor in a forgotten station. Some of the officials and soldiers looked angry. Some looked confused. But none of them spoke out against the warlord. General Vortach was nowhere to be seen. He had fled when he learned that Kesthen had survived the assassination attempt. Eleanor stepped forward slowly. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, Valerian eyes studying this small human female who had somehow become co-ruler of half an empire. I accept, she said, her voice steady now. But I accept on one condition. Keston raised his eyebrows slightly. Name it. That we use this power to change things, Eleanor said. That we create hospitals in every territory. That we establish laws that protect the weak from exploitation. That we make this empire better than it was before. Keston smiled for the first time since she had met him. Agreed, he said. And in that moment, Eleanor Mitchell's exile truly ended. She had gone from being cast out by her own people to ruling an empire. But more than that, she had found a purpose that was greater than she had ever imagined. 6 months had passed since Eleanor Mitchell became co-ruler of the Eastern Valerian territories. 6 months of long days, difficult decisions, and constant work. She had traded her small medical station for a palace, but she had not stopped being a doctor. If anything, she had become more of one. Eleanor stood in the new hospital that had been built in the capital city of Velcathan. The building was large and modern, with clean white walls and rows of beds that were filled with patients from all species and all social classes. In the old days, a slave would never have been treated in the same hospital as a nobleman. But Eleanor had changed that. She had created laws that said every life had equal value. A young Valerian boy approached her, limping slightly. His leg was injured, the bone broken in 3 places. Eleanor had operated on him 2 days ago, using techniques that had surprised even the experienced Valerian physicians who worked in the hospital. How does it feel? Eleanor asked, examining his leg carefully. Better, the boy said. The pain is less. When will I be able to run again? In about 4 weeks, Eleanor said. But you must be patient. If you run too soon, you could damage the healing bone. I know waiting is hard, but your body needs time. The boy nodded, understanding. Eleanor had learned that patience was a concept that most warriors did not understand, but children were different. Children understood that some things took time. She moved through the hospital, checking on other patients. There was a merchant from a neighboring territory who had suffered a stroke. There was a Valerian soldier with a serious infection. There was a female alien creature from a species Eleanor had never treated before, who was pregnant and experiencing complications. Each patient received Eleanor's full attention. She spent time with each one, explaining what she was doing and why. She trained the Valerian physicians to do the same. Medicine, she believed, was not just about fixing bodies. It was about treating people with respect and dignity. Across the city, in the palace, Keston was working in his own way. He had called a meeting of all the regional governors and military commanders. The warlord sat at the head of a long table, listening to reports of trade, military movements, and territorial disputes. But he was different now. The brutal commander who had once settled disputes through violence was becoming something else. He had learned from Eleanor that there were other ways to solve problems. Negotiation. Understanding. Compromise. General Vortach has fled to the Western Territories, one of the commanders reported. He is gathering forces, trying to build an alliance against us. Let him try, Keston said calmly. We have something he does not have. We have the support of the people. When they see that we are building hospitals instead of burning villages, when they see that we are protecting them instead of exploiting them, they will choose us over Vortach. The commanders looked at each other uncertainly. This was not the Keston they had known. But no one dared to question him. That evening, Eleanor and Keston met in the palace gardens. It had become their custom, a time when they could speak freely, away from the demands of ruling an empire. How many hospitals can we build? Eleanor asked, sitting on a bench overlooking the city. As many as you need, Keston replied. The treasury is strong. The people are beginning to understand that investing in health makes them stronger than investing in weapons. Eleanor smiled. She had thought that coming to Kethril meant giving up everything she believed in. She had thought that exile meant the end of her life as a doctor. But instead she had found something better. She had found a place where her skills were not just valued but essential. She had found a purpose that was larger than herself. There is something else, Keston said. 3 other warlords from neighboring territories have sent messages. They want to adopt your medical reforms in their own lands. They want to send their physicians here to learn from you. Eleanor felt a mix of emotions. Pride certainly. But also responsibility. I will teach them, she said. But they must understand that this is not just about technique. It is about philosophy. It is about believing that every life matters. Over the following weeks, Eleanor's influence began to spread beyond the Eastern Territories. Physicians from other regions came to study her methods. Some of them were skeptical at first. How could a human, a female human at that, have anything to teach experienced Valerian doctors? But they learned. They learned about hygiene and sterilization. They learned about surgical techniques that Eleanor had developed. They learned about the importance of listening to patients, of treating them as partners in their own healing rather than passive recipients of medicine. One day, Eleanor received a visitor from a distant territory. It was a young Valerian female, a physician like herself, though trained in the traditional ways. "I came to see if the stories were true," the female said. "They say that a human female rules here. They say that she has changed everything." Eleanor laughed. "I do not rule alone," she said. "Keston rules with me. I simply bring a different perspective to problems." "But you are a female," the Valerian physician said, as if this explained something important. "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "I am also human. I'm also a doctor. I'm also someone who believes that wisdom does not come from strength alone. It comes from compassion and understanding." The Valerian physician spent a week learning from Eleanor. When she left to return to her own territory, she brought with her detailed notes on Eleanor's surgical techniques and her philosophy of medicine. News spread across the galaxy. There was a human on Kethril, an exiled doctor who had become the most powerful medical figure in an entire region. Some saw her as a savior. Others saw her as a threat. But everyone saw her as important. Eleanor did not think of herself as important. She thought of herself as someone who was doing a job she loved. Every day brought new patients, new challenges, new opportunities to save lives and ease suffering. One afternoon, she was treating a young child from a species that had been enemies of the Valorians just months before. The child was injured in the border conflicts that still happened occasionally, despite Keston's attempts at peace. Eleanor worked carefully, setting the broken bones, applying medicines, providing comfort. The child's mother watched from across the room, her expression changing from suspicion to gratitude as she saw her child receive such care. Keston appeared in the doorway of the medical room, watching. Eleanor felt his presence without looking up from her work. When she finally finished and the mother and child had been moved to a recovery room, Keston spoke. "You have not changed," he said. "Even with power, even with authority, you are still just a doctor." Eleanor looked at him, at this warlord who had become her partner in ruling an empire. "That is all I ever wanted to be," she said. "Everything else just happened." "No," Keston said. "You chose this. You chose to save my life. You chose to accept power and use it to help others. You chose to be more than just a doctor. You chose to be a leader." Eleanor did not argue. She knew that he was right. She had made these choices, each one a decision to stand for something, to believe in something, to fight for something. That night, Eleanor stood in the palace throne room, looking out at the city below. Lights twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere in that city, people were being healed. Somewhere out there, physicians were using her techniques to save lives. Somewhere, the galaxy was becoming a little bit better, a little bit kinder, because one exiled human doctor had refused to compromise her principles. She had lost her home. She had lost her people. She had lost her old life. But she had gained something far more valuable. She had gained purpose. She had gained meaning. She had gained the knowledge that one person, armed with nothing but skill, compassion, and determination, could change the world. And that was worth more than anything she had left behind.